clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now it's time to roll back and start the first case.
Please enjoy this special release episode prior to the start of Season 8 of the First Case podcast. This session was first presented at the OR Manager Conference in 2022. Tune in to gain tips, insights, and perspectives on successfully climbing the leadership ladder.
A 17 Studios production, you're listening to First Case.
My name is Lynn Nolan, and I'm here today with my friend Vicki Fantis. Vicki and I met over a decade ago when we were volunteers at the ABPANC, which is the American Board of Peri-Anesthesia Nurse Certification. We volunteered and started writing certification exam questions, became very good friends just very quickly, different generations, great friends, and we live in the Midwest and then on the East Coast. And we have gone through a journey almost together in the past decade of going from working with people to leading people and now in an interim director and a director role. We have a unique kind of situation where our background is peri-anesthesia. It's not the operating room. And so it's not typical for peri-anesthesia nurses to actually move into director roles over ORs. And so we talked a little bit about what an opportunity we would have to discuss that. How do you climb that ladder if you're in a different area where people may not see you as that person that can be over the OR? So we welcome you today, and hoping I can figure out all the technical pieces. We want to talk first about our learning objectives. We really want to talk about tips and successfully navigating this change from peer to leader. It's real challenging if you're moving from being with somebody next to them and now leading them. Identifying strategies for creating and maintaining resilience as a new leader, and discussing some useful leadership care perspectives. We would like to use, it's not on there, of course. I was hoping it would be. So you saw it though, right? On the Slido, it did work. Start presenting to display the bowl. Start presenting. Display settings. We trialed this before we came here, by the way. And nope. So sorry. So we're going to do a show of hands because it did work though, Vicki, didn't it? We came early, guys, just to get this to work, you know? Of course we did. Thank you. She's going to fix me. So just by a show of hands, and I'm going to go past those. What is your role? How many staff nurses do we have in the room? Just by a show of hands. No. Clinical coordinators, charge nurses, permanent charge people. Great. A few of us started there as well, me. Assistant nurse managers. Okay, great. Managers. Predominantly the room is managers. And then directors. Okay. Any VPs in the room? That's good, because we're not VPs. So I'm happy right now. All right. This is going to be a little difficult to do this way, but I think we're just going to have to be able to kind of call out, what are people aspiring to do? Just anybody that's willing to say, like, what do you see yourself doing? Anyone. Director. Great. Anybody in the back? Where do you see yourself? It's a 5-year question. Where do you see yourself? Just call it out. You don't have to raise your hand. Okay, can I say, is there people in the room that want to be a director? Can you raise your hands? Okay, managers that are looking to be a director. Clinical coordinators or charge nurses looking to be managers. Raise your hand. Okay, good. That's what we're here to talk about, climbing the leadership ladder. We won't rank our objectives. We're just going to hit them all so that you can feel confident that we did. I want to pass it over to Vicki because what we do want to tell you is a little bit about our own leadership journey. We promise not to give you a novel, but we are going to give you a little bit of our journey because it's unique and it's different and everybody's is different. And I'm going to hand it over to Vicki.
Good morning. How many of you guys are new to your leadership roles? Okay, good. So any new like A&Ms? Yeah, okay, very good. So we thought it would be a good idea to share our leadership journeys because, everybody's is unique. So if you take nothing else from this presentation, just know that, not everybody goes in a straight line. Not everybody goes in a stepwise line, not even a dotted line. Sometimes it's a hot mess or a squiggly line like mine. So a little bit about me. So I started out as a critical care nurse in nursing school. The closest I got to peri-op was watching a C-section in my L&D rotation. So I had no peri-op experience when I came out of nursing school. I went directly into the ICU and thought that's where I would be forever because that was my dream, to be an ICU nurse forever and ever and ever. But then after 3 years of being night shift and basically not a whole lot of support as a new nurse, right? I started to get burned out. And but despite that, I had the good fortune of meeting the night shift PACU nurses that were at my facility. They would frequently come and save me a lot of nights when I was the trauma call, the code call, and everything else for the hospital, in addition to being in charge and having my own assignment. So they would help me all the time, and I struck up a friendship. And so when the position became available in the PACU, they reached out to me knowing that I was like burning out. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to go to the PACU. It's going to be so much less stressful because, I want to go back to school and become a nurse practitioner. So I learned 2 things when I got to the PACU. The first thing was that it was not less stressful. I had to learn a whole new type of nursing, right? But the second thing was that I really found my home with nursing. Like I totally fell in love with peri-anesthesia nursing, all things peri-op, and really discovered that, okay, this is where I want to be. Like, forget critical care. No, I'm kidding. This is where I want to be. I really enjoyed it. So I ended up, going back to school. I became a nurse practitioner, but I never really left peri-op. I worked for an anesthesia department doing pre-admission testing physicals. That's how I used my NP degree. But always kept my toe dipped in PACU, but really my whole foot because I worked PRN or just to keep my skills up because, again, I really enjoyed practicing. So all along the way, different things would come to me here and there. I'd be the charge nurse. I'd be in charge of a task force. I'd be in charge of a project. I got involved with ABPANC and somehow became the president, which was mind-boggling, but whatever. So different leadership opportunities were coming my way. But I always felt like my first picture, because even at 2 years old, I knew that, no, this is not good. Being a manager, painful. Like, no way. It was always inspired. Whenever someone said to me, oh, you should apply to be the permanent charge nurse, or you should apply to be the A&M or the manager, I was always like, ugh. Like, that sounds painful. And it would fill me with angst, fear, disgust, just like that picture. But anyway, but then as time went on, and especially with my experience with ABPANC, because I was leading a group of nurses. So yes, it's a totally different type of leadership. It's not a nurse manager traditional role. But what I found was that I really enjoyed leading nurses. And, to me, in my mind, it's like, well, what's better than taking care of the people who take care of people, right? But lo and behold, in 2019, I was going along, loved my practice, loved my patients, loved my job. But I knew that I wasn't really challenged. And I thought, I really would like a challenge. And then boom, lo and behold, I get a call out of the blue, talk about fate, from that same PACU nurse who plucked me out of the ICU and calls me and says, hey, Vicki, our manager is retiring not retiring, she was leaving after 16 years. Would you be, we were talking amongst ourselves, like, we need a nurse who has who has a master's degree, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's the only reason you thought of me? She's like, well, no, you were a great charge nurse, So would you be interested, or would you ever consider going into management? And so by this point, I had 20 years of nursing under my belt. and all these different leadership opportunities, and thought to myself, you know what, I want a challenge. So yes, I'll consider it. So I applied. I had to do a lot of convincing of that CNO, because on my resume, there was no official, manager position or even an assistant nurse manager position behind my name. So luckily, I was able to convince the CNO that, hey, I had acquired all these leadership skills along the way. I am a subject matter expert in what I was going to be leading. And she took a chance on me. And I never looked back. You can see my picture on the right. It did take quite a bit for me to get to that point where I'm a little more confident. I realize that pose is a little obnoxious with my arms crossed, but either way, just a little context. I actually did this life change in 2019, the end of the summer, like August-ish. And my predecessor left me with a building move. So that was my first task. I was a new manager, new teams, because by this point I was at a different organization, right? So I had learn all new people. A few old folks were still there, and learn my role, move 3 different departments, this whole thing. And then we moved the first week of March 2020, which, as we all know, everything shut down. The world shut down, right, with COVID. And then my one and only mentor, who was the surgical services director at the time, quit the second we moved. And I mean the day we moved in and we said, all right, we're here. Everything's moved in. She said, oh, by the way, I'm not coming to work tomorrow because I just resigned. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mentor. So it was a very, I wanted a challenge. I didn't realize I was getting a baptism by fire, but it was, so far it's been a good experience. But the whole point in telling you all that gobbledygook is really just to kind of tell you that there is no one path, to leadership. Mine was very twisty and turny, as you can see. I always, and Lynn's going to laugh because she's heard this come out of my mouth so many times. I've always said to everybody, well, I'm a clinician. I'm not part of the bureaucracy. I would never be a manager. I define myself as a clinician, but eventually I changed my ways a little bit. And now, I can honestly say that I probably will never look back. Somebody asked me the other day, don't you miss being a nurse practitioner? And I'm like, well, it's not like I didn't do it for 20 years, but at the same time, not really, because I've gotten so much enjoyment and rewarding experiences out of being a leader and using my different skills. And also, taking care of nurses. I don't think there's any better job for me. So like I said, I was, thrown into the fire during COVID. And when you're going from being a peer to being a leader, it's really hard because, especially in crisis, we can do a whole presentation on leading through crisis, which we won't do. But one of the things that helped me was just finding some motivation and strength from other people. And one of them is, believe it or not, I found this quote early on, Rosalind Carter, who said, a leader takes people where they want to go, but a great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but they ought to be. And that's really what I had to do during COVID, was basically tell my new PACU team, which I didn't know me, probably 6 months, less than 6 months. Hey, you guys are all being deployed to the ICU tomorrow, kind of thing. And it was a challenge. Thankfully, I have the best team in the world. I am biased, but they are awesome. And they were really great, although they didn't warn me that I shouldn't have turned my butt to the camera in that picture. But either way, they are a great group. But it was very tough. And I had to keep reminding myself that, because I always felt like I was failing them, and I had to keep reminding myself, no, this is tough, but this is what a good leader does. And so I have that quote written on a little Post-it note because I love Post-its, and it's in my desk drawer, and I do revisit it often if I have to deliver a challenging message to my group, especially with change. So change is, that's what everybody feels when they go from being a peer to being a leader, right? And I feel for a lot of you, especially the person who raised their hand who said they were a new A&M, because basically you went from being, working side by side to now, managing your coworkers, right? So you're the boss, basically. And that's really difficult. And so what happens is there's this huge shift and there's huge change in relationships. It can be very tricky, like having to navigate those difficult conversations, especially when, you're used to, maybe you socialized with somebody outside of work and, they know you're good, you're bad, you're ugly, right? And now you have to maybe have a crucial conversation with them about their tardiness or whatever. So that can be very tricky. And sometimes earning the respect and trust in your new role can be hard, because what if you are managing, you've been working with people so many years and now you're managing maybe the person who precepted you, who has 20 years on you, and that's very real, especially in the PACU, right? And pre-op is another area. So, that can be really hard. And I would say that the thing that helps, or the easiest thing, is it's always communication, whether it's listening, which is probably the most important skill you should develop, to communicating in a transparent, honest, and just being humble, I think, and you're going to hear me say this multiple times, is the best way to navigate that. Also, leveraging that relationship that you have established with that person. Because eventually, it does take a little bit of time, but if you can do those things, you will gain that respect and that trust of in your new role. It can be very lonely, to be a leader, because again, now you're the boss, kind of thing. And, luckily I was used to this, because as a nurse practitioner, we're not really invited to the doctor table and we're not invited to the nurse table. We're on the island usually by ourselves. So I'm used to eating lunch by myself. Actually, I'm not used to eating lunch by myself. I'm a pretty social person. I sit wherever I want. But either way, it can be lonely. So, remembering that you have built these relationships along the way, and you should continue to build those relationships along the way. So you're not lonely at lunch. Also, one of the things that changes is that you're now the face and the voice of your team. So whereas before you were just part of the team, I hate to use the word the worker bee, but, it wasn't, you might have not been the voice of the team to others. Now you are. And so there is a certain amount of responsibility with that. And, what do you project to the rest, globally, in other words, to everybody else? And so reaching outside of that perioperative bubble, will help you navigate going from peer to leader, because you need to lean on other leaders to help you along the way. That was something that I did early on, was I reached out to all the other managers, to develop a relationship, not just the surgical unit floor. I went to the ED, I went to oncology, I went to peds, I went to all the places that really probably have nothing to do with PACU, but I did anyway. And, developed a relationship with them so that, I had to develop my own network, of people that I knew who I can lean on. So number one thing is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's what ends up happening. So when you go from being a peer, you're pretty comfortable, you're a subject matter expert, you know your stuff, you're an excellent nurse, etc. When you're a leader, you don't sometimes know what you're doing. And what I mean by that is you don't really know what's coming next. You can have an agenda in your head, but it never happens. And really being prepared for the unexpected and being comfortable with that, because nothing's perfect, including people, right? And, it does take a lot of courage to take that step from being a peer to going to leadership, because what ends up happening is, you're now accountable 24/7, right? So if there's, a water main break or, the power goes out, your team's going to call you, right? They're not going to call the nurse who just worked the shift before, they're going to call the leader. So, that does come with transitioning into a leadership role. Also, you end up being the last line decision maker in a lot of instances, right? So, learning to, take on that responsibility with some courage and, knowing and giving yourself a little bit of slack, cutting yourself some slack, because you're not always going to make the right decision, and that's okay. But always remembering that you're supporting whatever you do, you're doing it in support of your staff and your peers. That's, that you'll never go wrong with that. And then also recognizing that, you're no longer the expert. You're now the novice. And I am experiencing that right now, because as Lynn, when I was introduced, I have gone now, all of a sudden, I'm the interim director of the OR, or all of peri-op services, I should say. And my favorite are the OR, because I'm really? Like, do you guys realize I don't know the difference between a gauze pad and a movie pad? I mean, I can certainly, like, instruments, like, don't ask me about those, I mean, I can save your life if you're, like, coding. I mean, so there's that, but, OR, like, I haven't learned it yet, so I'm now the novice and I have to learn that. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my own advice that I have on the screen here, which is I'm really spending a lot of time seeking to understand, because that's what you must do. Even if you know what you're doing, even if PACU is like, you could do it with your eyes closed, or pre-op is like your wheelhouse, you still need to seek to understand, because that's how you'll gain the trust of your team. Because everybody has their own agenda. Everybody has their own needs. And so really being humble and, finding out what everybody needs is important, because they always come to you for the answers, and you may not always have the answers, and that's okay. So if you remember nothing else, the last thing on this slide, which is, know your resources, know your peeps, like I said before, like develop that relationship, develop that network of other managers, even your team members, because each team member may have like a specific specialty or a specific, affinity for something that's very helpful. And knowing who those people are, knowing where to go to get the answers, or knowing where to go to get help, is really important. And that's really what your team expects of you. And that comes with practice. It does come with a little bit of experience, but at the same time, like I said before, if you are, if you're present, if you're on time, I always told myself, as long as I'm on time, I'm present and I'm supportive, I think things will be okay. And they are, actually. Even though, I willingly tell people, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm totally clueless. Help me understand. That's like my normal phrase. And I think it puts people at ease, and they realize that you're human. Like, you're not going to solve the problems, because not everybody expects you to solve everything. And I think I went into it going from peer to leader, like, oh my God, they expect me to have the solution to everything. And that's not really the case. So, again, just know where you can go to get the answers, know your resources. Like I said before, know your peeps and develop those relationships.
Funny how my slide looks a little bit like Vicky's, but I'm older, so I have more things up there. The path to leadership for me, was incredibly filled with detours. This is my third time being placed or interviewing and moving into a leadership role, and I've been doing it this time greater than a decade. The first time I'd like to talk about a little bit, because you see we have some newer leaders. In fact, we have quite a few newer leaders in the room. And what I didn't do very well that time was probably transition myself from truly a peer into a leader position. And I took a pretty big detour. I was 5 years a nurse at that time. You can see I have a cap, so that's how old I am. Many of you probably don't have one of those. And I was about 5 years after moving into a surgical heart unit, where I was a surgical heart nurse. We were known as kind of a big deal in the hospital. It was kind of a cool job those days. And I interviewed for a job that I thought everybody was more qualified for than me. And I really wanted it. And I got it. I reported directly to the chief operating officer of the hospital, and it was awesome. I loved that job. I was meeting new people and getting new experiences. And 2 years after I took the job, I got pregnant with my first child. You see all those people at the bottom there? My boss, in those days, you could say all kinds of things you cannot say today. He was like, are you going to come back to work? Should I fill your position? Those days, you could talk about those things. Today, you can't actually ask those questions. And I had fully intended, because we had an on-site daycare, it was going to be great, I was going to drop him off. I came back to work about 9 months in, after he was about 9 months old. I struggled every day dropping him off. I don't even know why. I just couldn't do it. And I resigned from my position. I went in to tell him, and he said to me, wow, Lynn, you are on this trajectory. It is straight up. And when you make this move, you're never going to be able to go back. You're never going to get where you want to be. And I thought, what I want to do with my child, what he's telling me, do I believe this? And I just went for it, and I went to resource, and I worked like that for 7 years, and I'm here to tell you he was wrong. Okay, so your path does not have to be straight. Your path does not have to be what anybody tells you it is. Okay, you make your path. I went into leadership when the kids were, grade school or something like that. I had not learned balance. Anybody in this room have problems with balance? We're going to talk about it a little bit. Yep, I'm going to guess your hand should go up. I was at Magnet. I learned that managers work 24.6 hours a day. Yeah, they did a study out of Penn. Anybody that went to Magnet learned. Not sure how we do that, but we do. So I had a lot of trouble with balance. So I had 3 children in 4 years, raising those children. They were in grade school. And I like to get the A. I'm going to guess a few people in this room like to get the A, right? So when I get 2 points off, I want to know why. So I'm not okay to not do everything I can to do the job as well as I can. And I didn't balance very well. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that too, because really to climb the ladder, you need to learn balance. Okay, you really have to, or you can't do it. You burn yourself out too quickly. So I ended up leaving that job. In fact, my mother drove me to the job. My mother, I'm a grown person, 3 children. They're in the back seat of the car. She made me walk up the stairs, hand in my letter, because she thought I wouldn't do it if she wasn't down the stairs. Okay. Still listening to my mother today. The last time I went into leadership, I changed my perspective. And I think that's what we're going to talk about next. Really, I like this quote because truth, you're not really always comfortable with life. Life gives you a lot of uncomfortable situations. I will tell you, sitting across from the COO telling me that I would never get where I wanted to be was very uncomfortable. Speaking up for myself and saying, well, this is what I'm going to do, very uncomfortable. You also, as Vicki said, and it's funny, she said it out loud, you can't solve every problem. You just can't. So don't expect yourself to. But know that you're being watched. Your team is watching you. The people that want to be, there are people that want to be you. Okay, so it's a really humbling experience to know that, but they're watching how you do it. And so it's important to know that you have an impact on others. So make sure you understand that what you want to do and the courage to do it is being seen, and never underestimate that impact. So this is a little something my dad told me. So my dad, in my whole life, my dad, I thought, never knew anything. You know, I knew everything. My dad, what did he know? As I get older, I learned that he knows so much more than I ever knew. I was in a manager role before I have the role that I have now. I used to go to visit my parents by myself. They live in a different state, and I'd stay there with them. I would wake up in the morning. I thought this was a good thing, by the way. It was shared with me by my dad that it was not. I'd pull up my computer. He'd make me breakfast. I thought this was the greatest thing. I would work. He would make breakfast. He would serve it to me. When I left that job, he said to me, please do me a favor in this new job. All you did was work. You came to visit us. You worked from the time you got up till the time you went to bed. If something came in, you opened the computer, you worked. You never actually not worked. And this time I want you to do something a little different. First, I want you to go into the job and I want you to look. Look at everyone. Really look at them. Listen to what they have to say. Don't try to change something in the first 2 weeks you're in there. You're not going to solve every problem immediately. Learn their processes, learn the people, learn their culture, learn everything you can about them, and live. Everyone is watching you. If you don't show your team that you can live, you have annihilated your succession plan. If everyone watches you exhausting yourself constantly, no one will want to do what you do. I had successfully done that at my other job. They had been like, no one can follow Lynn. Who would do that job? Because I was putting out emails all Saturday, all Sunday, late into the evening, not realizing that that was making it difficult for my team. And laugh, because laughter, first of all, is the best medicine, as we know. And laughter shows people that you can balance this very difficult job that you're doing and all the other things. But if you have the ability to laugh, and especially laugh with your team, it's pretty impressive. I know I sit sometimes with the team and I have lunch, and I'll go back and somebody will say to me, "Thanks so much for having lunch with us. It was great." You have no idea how much that means to them, because it's just this downtime that they see you differently. I learn a lot of things by failure. Anybody else in this room learn by failure? You make big mistakes. Yeah, I do. I like sticky notes like Vicky. That's my first action plan. I'm going to guess there's sticky note people in this room. If you walked into my first office when I was an assistant manager, my whole computer monitor, and I love those little teeny ones. They're like 1x1s because you can fit tons of things around your monitor. That was my first action plan, sticky notes. Got a little bit too hard to follow that, so then I made a Word document. I graduated to Excel, and I am not going to do an entire tutorial on this, but I'm going to tell you the newest thing I've learned is you must use tools. If you're using paper today, oh, I forgot. Everybody has like a binder they carry around, right? We write everything into it, scratch it off when it's done. Most people carry that around somewhere. But I've progressed to something called, OneNote. It's new for me. So, yeah, see? How many people in this room know about OneNote? Yes. Oh, thank God. Is it not the greatest thing ever? Like, who knew? I have this new HR director who's like, "Have you ever used OneNote?" No, I've not. She's like, "You've got to use it. It's the best thing if you're managing or leading people. If you have like a project that you're working on, if there's anything that you're doing, you can build these tabs at the top. And mine, you can see I have like CVI because we're building, my love language is building new buildings. So I know this now because my last job was building a whole brand new hospital, ground up. My new job is building an entire cardiovascular institute. I don't know why I keep doing this. I must be insane. But I have a whole tab on CVI, and underneath it is like chapters, and one chapter is like FTEs. So when my boss calls and says, "Hey, I need that FTE structure," I go right to OneNote, right to CVI, and then you see this great red box I put in there that says email. Click email. Instead of opening shared drive, correct file, correct document, it's all in one spot. Beauty of OneNote, if you've never used it, is like Google Docs. It saves as you type. You don't have to be like, "Oh God, I didn't save that." Because we've all done that, right? I used it as a manager. I put employee and then all their names at the side. If I had to have some sort of a crucial conversation with someone, or even a good conversation, like I want to recognize you for something you did, I'll type it up on here, hit email, it goes right to them. You can add all kinds of things to it. So if you give corrective action, you can actually attach the policy. You can attach the corrective action. It is an amazing tool. Now I'm going to tell you how to use it. I went home. My youngest son is an IT guy. I said, "Jim, I really need help to learn this new tool." He goes, "Okay, sit down, pull it open, type this in, YouTube." Thanks. The funniest part is YouTube is the greatest manager or director tool ever. If you need to learn how your time card systems work, somebody has created a YouTube on it. Seriously. How do we self-schedule? Go to YouTube. It's amazing. Everything that you need is in YouTube. So, again, we'll move on, but I would highly encourage you to look at this at OneNote, because people that like to do lists, that first list says, like show the value of OneNote. When you finish that topic, you can check it and click. I do what's called weekly, like my weekly to-do list. And as I go through that weekly, and it's this long, right? Everybody's is this long, like you can't get through it. But I check things off as I do it, and then I transfer to the next week, and everything that I've checked off, I remove. Just a quick tip. It's electronic. It's not paper. I don't have to copy things over. It's a great tip. Vicki touched on this. Communication is key. She used the words transparency, honesty, integrity. She did it without even looking at the slide. Because if you can do this, if you can communicate across the spectrum of direct reports, peers, executive team, and your physician partners, a lot of leading people is very simple. If this is not a skill you have, go to courses that help you to learn this skill. You're going to need to use influence. when you talk to people that report to you. You're going to have to influence them to move to an uncomfortable place. We talked about that already. We've all done that in the last years. But you want to do it so people don't hear you directing them. You want them to move there because they want to follow you. So that takes some skill. And that skill is something that you need to learn if you want to lead and you want to keep moving yourself up in leadership. You need to become very apt at influence. How do you share what you know and get people to move forward? The executive team, brevity is key here. So I was just in smoke evacuation education. It was fantastic. And they talked a little bit about how do you write your senator, and she said 2 paragraphs, like that's it. Don't ever write more than that. Executive team, my executive team leader, I have to actually put in my actual lead title, like what it's regarding, need $3,000 new headlamp. He does not want to read. He wants me to tell him, because he said, I have over 100 and something emails. If it's important, tell me in the first line what you need. I've learned through time that that actually is very effective when you're communicating up. It's the same with physicians. You write too much, they won't read it. Bullet. It's key. It's the key in communication. But when it comes to who you are and what your team is seeing, be transparent, be honest, and have integrity. What does that look like? There are going to be times you're going to be asked something that you actually can't tell someone. So why did so-and-so get termed? Why are they no longer here? When you tell a nurse that you don't know, they're reading your body language and they know you know. Okay? And now you've just lied to them. And they know. So how do you manage that? You have to think about it. Tell them the truth. I'm sorry, that's not information I can share. And if it was you, I wouldn't be able to share that either. Okay. You have maintained your integrity. They know that you're being honest. You have to find a way to communicate with people that actually tells them the truth without telling them what you can't tell them. Okay, it's really important. And we're all working with nurses, realize they've been assessing people their entire profession. Okay, so they're real good at picking out when you don't say what the truth is. We are shifting our care perspectives. Vicki said this too, and I said this all the time. This is how I stayed in this role. I loved taking care of patients. It was absolutely the very best job I've ever had. The joy I got from the Good Save is immeasurable. I couldn't actually put it on paper. It gave me something inside that I don't even know that money can't buy it, what I felt. And I moved into leadership and I was like, God, they can't even come on time? I mean, what am I doing here? And I got frustrated because the patients didn't do that to me because I could take care of them. They needed my help. But the people that I kept talking to were the ones that were like not coming to work, not doing the right things. And I started to think, wow, I wanted to stay doing what I was doing and I had to change how I thought. So what I thought to myself is, these are good people, essentially healthcare workers, deep down, very good people. I don't always love what they do, but I love them. And all of a sudden it got a little better. And I thought to myself, let me ask what's going on with you. Like, is there a problem? Like, what's going on? How come you're having trouble getting to work? And I just started talking to them and thinking about them a little bit more like I would think about patients. And I said to myself, you're going to take care of the people that take care of the patients, just like you would take care of the patients. You're going to give them everything. Be as open and honest as you can and really listen to them. And it changed everything because I would have small wins. It would be like, and anybody that's been leading for a while has probably heard some really horrendous things. Once you open yourself up to staff, they will tell you things that you could not even imagine are happening in their lives. And so what I learned is that I could help them through that. And so that changed my perspective. So instead of getting angry every time, I do that to myself. And before I have a very hard conversation, I will say, remember, you love the people, not the action. Okay, now let's talk. Why can't you come to work on time? Think globally. When people see you think global, they see you moving up. If you're a person that just myopically thinks about your department, your division, your this, your that, and you can't think outside of yourself, people don't necessarily think of you as being able to grow. So you have to be able to think about, what could we do better globally? How can I help that? You are always strategically thinking. It's how every leader thinks. You're not thinking in the moment. You're thinking in the moment when things happen that are pretty dramatic, and that happened that second. But you're not thinking in the moment. Problem solving, shifting. You're actually shifting yourself into what you're thinking, and you're looking at the system as a whole. You stop looking just at the staff needs. You look at the organization. And you are accountable for performance and finance. And how do you help people see that? You tell them on their own level. You explain it to them. We are going to go into work-life balance in the next few slides, and then Vicki's going to finish it up for us. But I do want to tell you kind of how I share that accountability for performance, because it's hard, right? You have to talk to them about productivity, and right now everybody's talking about it. We're all really strained. So everyone has a home, and when I talk to my team about it, I say to them, you have a home, you have bills that come in, you have things you have to pay, and you're accountable to that. The departments are exactly the same way. There is money coming in, there's money going out. And all we're trying to do right now is not waste money. So at home, what does that look like? Nobody leaves the lights on when you leave the room or you leave the house. That's wasteful. You don't leave the air conditioning on and open the door. That's wasteful. We're doing the same thing here. So I'm asking you to think about, what are those things in our current work environment that could be wasteful? And we need to actually look at how to reduce those. Now they might have buy-in. They see that it's relative to what their real life is. Work-life balance, just maintaining resilience, is really where you need to be. Remember those 24.3 or 6 hours that you're all working? How many people think that they don't accomplish something? Like you go home and you say, God, I didn't get anything done today. Like nothing. Yeah, it happens, right? You're like, I got nothing done. The reality is you always get something done, but sometimes you feel like you didn't. So a mentor of mine told me years ago, accomplish 3 things every day. She wrote them on a dry erase board. I added the rest is gravy. 3 things. That's it. If you do 3 things, if you have that feeling in your gut, I didn't get anything done today, count 3. Yeah, you did. You're done. It's all good. Go home. The rest is gravy. Anything over 3 is gravy. I said to Vicki when she was taking a leadership role, I did try to talk her out of it, by the way. She didn't listen. She wanted to be a leader. One of those things can be lunch. As a leader, you don't eat. And I mean a real lunch, like 30 minutes. Count it. Okay, how many times do you sit down to really eat? What someone thinks of you is none of your business. When you move into leadership, people are going to literally say things about you. You're leading people. They're not going to like what you say. Sometimes they're not going to like what you do. Be honest, transparent, have integrity, and move forward. Be okay. Let them talk. It's not your business. Seek a trusted mentor. It helps with the loneliness of growing and leading. Somebody that you can actually talk to. Vicki and I do it. East Coast, Midwest. Do what you say and say what you do. If you tell someone you're going to do it, follow through. The time you don't, it will stick with you. If you can't follow through, make sure you follow up and tell them why. Really important. I'm going to lead it over to Vicki. She's going to finish up on her resilience.
So something that's really simple, but so hard to do, and that is, go home. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but I don't know about the rest of you, but this is like the hardest thing for nurses and leaders to do. You don't want to leave your team in a lurch. Like, oh, I'll help you transport that last patient, whatever it is. Like, I think that we get ourselves into trouble because we keep pushing our limit or keep pushing our boundary. So right now I'm in a situation where, like I said, I'm the interim director for surgical services, which we all know what happens with that. But either way, I'm mentoring 2 young, very young, actually, very new to leadership leaders. One of them being an OR manager, and the other one is my successor. who unfortunately is doing a fantastic job, which means I probably can get my job back. But either way, and the one thing I told them is, I always check on them like around 3:00. I'm like, what are you still doing here? I know you've been here since, 6:30. I know you've been here since 7:00. Like, you need to go home. You need to get out of here. Guess what? It's all going to be here tomorrow. Same crap, same place. Anyway, but I always tell them, like, you need to take care of yourself because I need you to be at the top of your game tomorrow because it's all going to be here again. And we're probably going to all have to deal with the same stuff, and I'm very good about that. I'm trying to instill that in them. Unfortunately, I'm not very good about it myself because at like 6:00, I'm like, oh, darn, I told them to leave and I'm still here. I better get out of here too, because I want to role model that, right? But that's really important, is taking care of yourself, because as we all know, if you can't take care of yourself, then you won't be able to take care of others, right? And knowing that it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Learning to say no is really important. Again, super hard to do for those of us who are, yes people, I guess. And we always want to be helpful, right? That's nurses. But sometimes you have to say no. Recently, I received a request from the CNO to head up a task force. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, how do I say no to the CNO? Like, what am I going to do? But I had to, because I knew I could not, I had too much on my plate. I was like, I have to go to the OR manager conference. I don't have time. No kidding. No, but really the reason was, I had to be realistic about what the expectation was of me and whether or not I could meet that. And so it was difficult, but I had to, say to her, listen, thank you so much for reaching out to me, but I just don't have the bandwidth to do this. What I can do is I can help you with X, Y, and Z, but you're going to need to maybe find someone else to lead this. And, think of me next time. No. I'll say no again. No, I'm kidding. But learning to say no, because you don't have to be you're the leader of your team, but you don't have to be the leader of every committee, every, task force, every initiative. Learn how to branch out and find other people who can do that for you. Because it's not always better to own, sometimes. And then again, learning to delegate, and this is just an everyday, is super important, because as we all know, does anyone like a micromanager? I don't think nobody likes a micromanager. But besides that, micromanagement is really the silent killer of leaders. It's not good because your staff won't like you, but it's also not good because it hurts you. It's really simple, again, to be like, oh, I'll just jump in and do it. I can do that. I can, change that Foley for you. Hold on. Let me put some scrubs on. No. Like, you need to learn how to not micromanage. You need to learn how to delegate. And, that's a skill that if you don't have that now, I recommend, developing. And, give yourself, if you learn nothing else today, I will say this, learn to give yourself a break and learn to give yourself the same grace that you give others. Like Lynn was describing, you give your team members the benefit of the doubt when things don't go the right way. Well, you should also learn to give yourself the same grace. And again, it's not easy to do for some of us, but I think that once I started learning to do that, I became a lot happier in my role, a lot less stressed. And, also like Lynn said, your team members, they pick up on your visual, they see you every day, they pick up on it. And sometimes they only see you for 5 minutes a day. And what you project at that time is what they take away for that day. So giving yourself that break is really important. So we do have, and we're going to take questions here in a minute, but we do have a quick little video for you, because for me, I like to laugh. That's what I do for resilience. Because, it's so much easier than getting on a treadmill. Hold on one second. Let me see here.
It is so much easier.
Yeah, it is so much easier, right? So anyway, so we have a funny little video for you. Hold on one second here. I think I have to bring it on to the screen. There it is. Right? Oh, but then I can't see it. Hold on a second. Okay. So just so you know, this is a little video. I don't know. A lot of you guys may already know, like Nurse Blake. He's kind of a silly comedian, right? And, you guys may have already seen this, but these are the types of nurse managers. And just a little thought, if you've ever worked for a really bad nurse manager, which I have to tell you, for many years. That was part of my resistance of becoming a manager. I would say, look at that as a learning experience, because that made me appreciate the manager I didn't want to be. So anyway, here you go. Thank you. Support. My IT support. I thought I had it.
Just bring it over. You have it on the screen.
Oops, I was just watching. Pretend I'm not here. Hey, Sarah. So I was looking at your whiteboards, and in room 10, it's not really eligible. So yeah, the patient's not able to read or understand it. So if you could go and redo that, that would be great. Bed 8, did you get them their orange juice? Well, I know the patient's NPO, but I think his family member wanted orange juice. And when shifts get hard and you're crying in the bathroom, remember, don't be sad. And what I know deep down is there is a Florence Nightingale here. One of you could be the next great nurse. So I actually have to run to a meeting, but y'all got this. Yeah, I'm actually at lunch right now. Yeah, sorry. So if you could come back when lunch is over. Well, if you need help with something, can you ask another coworker? Hello? Yeah, manager? Yeah, I'm actually assisting a nurse and a family right now. So can you try the other unit? Yep, I'm sure they have the bladder scanner anyways. What do you need help with? No, tell me what you need. Empty Foley? Okay. No, I got it. You go do your thing. I can empty. I remember how to empty Foley. I know it's been a few years since I've been at the bedside. Do you need help turning your patient? Yeah, I got it. Get on the other side. I'm going to help you turn. I'm the manager, okay? 1, 2, 3, returning. See, I still got it. Go ahead and wipe. You want me to wipe? You forgot to clock in this morning? Well, let me get the timesheet so you can write it down. Hang on 1 second. Oh, did you see the timesheet anywhere? Do you want anything for food? Yeah, I think we could do a pizza party and stuff if you just order. Hello? Wait, Jayco's coming today? Really? Okay, alright, bye. Jayco's coming today. Tell the team. Hey, if anyone needs me, I'm actually busy, so you'll have to reach out to me via email. Hey babe, I'm at work. Let me call you back, I'm busy. Hello, sorry, that was my boss. Can I help you? Did someone call me? Yeah, I'm actually busy right now, so I'm gonna have to see what's in a second. You guys, if you need me, I'm gonna be in a meeting, so my phone will be off and my office will be locked. So if you need anything, ask each other. I'm on my way.
Yeah, so we've all worked with one of those, right? Somebody. So anyway, now we're going to take any questions. If anybody has any questions for us. I'm just going to try to get that back up.
Be brave. Be brave. Ask one question. Anybody?
No? Anybody rethinking their decision to be a manager or a leader?
All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
We'll
be here if you have any questions. Oh, you got one question. Yay.
No questions. I just would like to thank Lynn and Vicki for the presentation. It was very insightful. Thank you.
So if someone... I guess I gotta yell. As someone who does not have OR experience, I cover everything else but the OR. How did you grow as a leader so that you could go into those higher leadership roles?
So you don't have OR experience, right? And you want to move into a role where you actually cover the OR. So OR directors typically don't have peri-anesthesia experience. They don't have sterile processing experience. They don't have endoscopy GI experience. Okay, so you are just as capable to do that role. The thing that you really need to do is you need to ingrain yourself in the OR. You need to be comfortable in there. It's where the majority of the money is spent. So I would say if you don't have great finance, like it's not something that's really in you, that you understand it well, that I would take some time to learn finance. It's really, that's something that I happen to do pretty well. Even though I was a peri-anesthesia leader for so long, I understand finance pretty well. I could write a proposal for things. I could put POs in and understand return on investment, things like that. And that's actually probably what helped me to move on, is that I can speak the words of language of finance, and that is really big in OR. So get yourself into the OR too. You have, there's clinical experts. When I interviewed for the director role, they asked me that. Everybody asked me that question. How are you going to lead the OR? And I said the same way the OR person leads PACU, pre-op, pre-surgical testing, sterile processing, and everything else. I'll find the clinical expert. I'll make sure that I understand the important things, and I'll speak for the team as a whole. Okay,
so just to add to what Lynn just said, so I'm going through this right now, the last 3 months, I would say. And, I was very nervous about it because, everybody knew me as I did have the luxury of, people knew me as the director of pre-testing, PACU, and pre-op. So they knew who I was, but they didn't really know me as a leader. And they also knew that I was not a scrub. I didn't go into the OR. I stayed outside on the periphery, So I was very nervous because I was always used to leading teams where I was also a subject matter expert. And so I had to get over myself. That was the first thing I had to do, is just say, you know what, it doesn't matter, because the reason that you are doing this is not because you are the best OR nurse in the world. It's because of your leadership skills. That's what they're looking for. So you have that ability to lead teams. And so the first thing I did, like Lynn said, was not so much embed myself in the OR, but I definitely, I sought out key people who I knew were the subject matter experts in each specific, area to really help me. And I went to them and started immediately establishing that relationship and saying, look, I want to understand what you're doing, because my job is to help you and to support you. And so in order for me to do that, I have to have an understanding of what it is you do. And so really kind of getting down to that level of, making people aware of where you're coming from, I think is really helpful, because you get that trust, and that, because you're not going to have 100% credibility from the get-go, right? But it's really helped me develop that credibility with my staff, because they believe that, yes, you really care, and that you want to make things better, and you actually care about what I do. And oh, you're coming to me because you think I'm the expert. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I don't know what, sterilization of instruments. You know what you're doing. So, I would say I'm pretty amazed. I didn't think it was good. I thought, okay, let me just kind of start out this way. And the other day I said to the OR manager, I go, well, do you guys really think this is working? Maybe we should, we're posting this position, right? And she was like, oh no, we don't want you to go. And I'm like, I know, but I still don't really, I feel bad, because if somebody needs something in the OR right away, it's not like I'm going to know what I'm doing. And she's like, but it doesn't matter, because that's what you have me for. I'm your OR manager. I'm like, yay. But either way, like I said, like Lynn said, is kind of developing, the skills are going to come, but give yourself a break. You're not going to learn it all in a week. It's going to take time, especially if you're coming from one background to another. But it is a trend that's all over the place. And I have to say that the other trend is not the director of surgical services not being clinical at all. There's a lot of places where the surgical services director is a business person. So just the fact that you're a nurse is actually really important, and the staff see that. So I also make a point that, even though I do go into the OR, of course, because environment of care and everything. I'm always in there, but I might not be actually working in a case, but I do go into the OR quite a bit. But I don't think the staff has ever seen me in this. I'm always in scrubs. I dress like they do, because it's not just the message of, I'm here to help you, but it is also, useful, because who wants to change at the last minute to run in to look at something? But But I think that makes a big difference. It's a message. I don't wear my navy blue scrubs, which is what I wear for PACU. I wear the light blue scrubs that are OR, because I want them to understand that I am part of their team. And so it seems small and like kind of dumb, but it is a big deal that they see you that way. Because the one day I did walk in with my navy blue because I was late and I didn't have time to change. They were kind of like, "Why are you dressed like that?" I was like, "Oh, let me go change." So even though I wasn't going into an OR room, I was just checking on everybody. So it is important to sometimes the little things, kind of build up, because you'll get there.